Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Five Drinks or Midnight. You know the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. Today we're talking to Nora and Adam, co-founders of Lost Lantern Whiskey. But before we do, like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Smash the buttons, do all the things. And if you like what we're drinking today, check out the link in the bio. Let's get started. Nora and Adam, thank you so much for joining us. 5 drinks or midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions, midnight, whatever comes first. Thank you so much for joining me today. First of all, let me just say thank you so much for these samples. I am really looking forward to drinking with you guys today. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
We're
really
excited to taste with you as well.
Excellent. I guess, the big first question is, what are we drinking first?
Yeah. So I think we'll start you with our American Vatted Malt. It's the only blend. It's the blue label. It's the only blend we have it so far. It's also the only thing we've put out so far that isn't cask strength. So it's kind of required that we start there. It's 105 proof. So yeah, we have ours poured already.
Oh, you guys already, okay. So yeah,
that's the only one we have poured. The
All
other
right.
ones we'll pour with you.
Oh, no, that's fine. All right. Well,
I like that glass. That's cool.
Oh, thank you. They're called Tuas. So Tua means family or nation in Gaelic. So it's an Irish drinking glass. And that's what we become after we finish this episode. So
I love it.
we will get you some Tuas.
I guess as you taste it, we might as well tell you about this.
Please, yes. Tell us. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is our flagship release, and we'll get more into what we do and who we are a little bit later. But for now, I'll just say this is our American Vatted Malt edition #1. It's a blend of American single malts from all around the country. It has whiskey from 6 different distilleries in it, from Copperworks in Washington, Westward in Oregon, Santa Fe Spirits in New Mexico, Balcones in Texas, Virginia Distillery Company in Virginia, and 888 on Nantucket in Massachusetts. 12 barrel blend, all different kinds of casks, blend of new and used oak. And we actually created this by getting all the distillers and blenders in a room together, bringing really special barrels, and we created the blend collaboratively.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
For us, the goal of this whiskey is really to give a snapshot of the landscape of American single malt as it is when we made it. And we do intend to do different versions of this kind of as it makes sense as whiskey evolves over the foreseeable future. So
I mean, the nose on this is absolutely amazing. So, well, cheers.
Cheers.
That is very nice. All right. Happy Monday to us.
Yeah.
So there's such a rich tradition of blending single malts in Scotland and in other parts of the world, but it's never really existed here before because there wasn't American single malt from more than a few places until the last couple of years. So this is one of the very first blends of American single malt, and we really set out to make a whiskey that did not taste like Scotch, that really captured what makes American single malt different, which is why there's a lot of casks that were in new oak in there, which you don't see very often in Scotland. And also some other new American traditions that are emerging. Like 2 of the casks in there, the ones from New Mexico, are made with mesquite smoked single malt, which is the Southwest answer to peat, and a really unique twist on that we were excited to incorporate.
You get that mystique in there too, which is really kind of nice. Because I was going to say, I'm kind of it tastes like Fritos, and not in a bad way, but like that's I'm getting the corn and the little bit like kind of liking this. This is I'm getting Fritos, but that's me. I have a very weird tongue, so this is.
It's a good reaction. We like that.
That is. I mean, again, we met at Whiskey Barrel Night, and I mean, when Robin said to go talk to you guys, and then I mean, I think I came back to your booth like 4, 5, 12 times. You know, like it was definitely, we had to continue this conversation more. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. So this is absolutely amazing. So, I guess then let's just jump right into question one. So it's a bit of an origin story, but how'd you get into the whiskey business?
So I think that's a good way to start with exactly what we're doing, which is we are an independent bottler of American whiskey. We don't have our own distillery. We never will. We buy whiskey from distilleries all around the country and aim to shine a light on places that are making whiskey in really unique ways, both through single casks and through blends and other things like that. And the whole idea of this came to us because we were both in the industry already in different ways. I used to be a senior whiskey specialist at Whiskey Advocate magazine and a senior editor for a couple of drinks trade magazines. So I've been writing about spirits for a long time. And Nora had been in the industry too, which we'll get into in a minute. But I was actually writing one story about the rich history of Scotch independent bottlers and what they've been doing for the last 200 years and the role they've played in the Scotch industry. And a different story about the rise of new distilleries all across the United States and places who are doing making unique whiskey with regional grains or regional like mesquite wood or things like that. And it occurred to me, why has no one ever done an independent bottler for American whiskey before? There are all these distilleries. It's really hard for the layperson to get their hands on the things that they've heard about if they're not in that state. It's hard for them to know which things are worth their time and which ones aren't. So it was really valuable for us to be able to do this and bring these whiskeys to a wider audience and help people discover things they wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah. And it's helped with finding great whiskey when he knew a lot of the distillers through his work at Whiskey Advocate and got to taste so many things at that time. I also got to taste, so I started my industry experience at Astor Wines and Spirits. I was a sales manager there, but I actually got a job there as a salesperson because I was I loved wine and I was really knowledgeable about wine. And I came in on the wine side and had planned to be focused on wine sales. And then I got promoted to sales manager and all of a sudden I was managing everyone. And it was really important that I be able to answer every question that any of my employees answer. So I spent a good portion of my time there training my palate, training my knowledge, really falling in love with whiskey and brandy and mezcal and tequila. It was a terrible job. Terrible. But it really primed me and my palate and my interest in what was happening in the US with what is now over 2,000 distilleries. And even working at Astor, I didn't get a chance to taste a lot of the really cool things that were happening. So it is an independent bottler sifting through everything and finding it. We spent a lot of time talking about how we wished that existed while he was at Whiskey Advocate and I was at Astor. And then over a couple of years, it went from this would be great to someone's definitely going to do this soon to maybe we're the right people to do this, and then enter Lost Lantern. So
excellent. Yeah. And then you're based out of Vermont, correct? And that's where home is for Lost Lantern as well. So
yeah. So we were living in New York City, and when we decided we wanted to do Lost Lantern, we realized that New York City isn't exactly the cheapest place to live as an entrepreneur, and it doesn't have a ton of space for warehouses. And we also needed to visit a lot of these distilleries and see the process and get to know the distillers and the owners and really figure out which distilleries made sense to work with. So when we left New York, we put everything in storage and we traveled around the US for 8 months pre-pandemic.
Wow.
And visited distilleries and started buying whiskey. And then I grew up in Vermont. So then when we came back east, then it made sense for us to settle in non-New York City. And so Vermont seemed like a natural fit for us.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
That really defined something that's very important for us is there was a world where we could have started an independent bottler by living in New York and emailing our buddies and saying hey, can we buy a couple barrels from you? But that's not the way that we wanted to do it. And we decided early on that we will only ever work with a distillery that we visited in person. We need to go there. We need to see how they do things. Even if it's really inconvenient to get to, we need to find a way to get there and talk to them and see what their climate feels like, what their equipment is like, how they're choosing to make whiskey, and how those choices influence what the whiskey tastes like.
Okay, so then you are pretty much just checking state off by state, because I mean, what you listed 5 with just what we're tasting now. So
yeah,
you went to all 5 of those, right? There was 5 Yep.
It's six. Yeah.
6. Sorry, I went to art school, bad at math.
No, how many distilleries have we visited?
I don't know, probably 150 to 200 by now, and I'm pretty rigorous about deciding where we go and doing a lot of research in advance. I actually just got back 2 days ago from 3 weeks on the road driving around the southeast, like the Carolinas and Georgia and Florida, which is a place we didn't get to before the pandemic. So it was nice to finally get there. So drove 4,700 miles in 2.5 weeks. So
he's exhausted, but here he is.
Yes.
Well, welcome home. So, all right. Well, I mean, that's question 1. So the train's leaving the station. I've already poured myself a little. I'm going to keep a little bit of this left, but I've already poured another one. So, but cheers to that. Question 1 done. Band-Aids ripped off. So
awesome, crushing it.
Yeah,
actually.
So next we're gonna do
Cedar Ridge Brown Label.
All right.
So the rest of the things that we're doing are single casks.
Okay.
So cask strength, single cask. This single cask we see as a way to really shine a light on distilleries that are doing wonderful things that people may not necessarily know about. Either they may know the distillery and not know they're doing this thing, or they may just not even have ever heard of the distillery. So it's a way for us to introduce people to great distilleries that we love. Have you?
And we always want it to be a discovery mechanism, so you can see like it has the name of the distillery right on
Cedar
the label.
Ridge.
And says right under what state it's on, and the copy on the back is all about why we're excited about that place. So it's truly transparent and an open book.
Mm-hmm. Have you had whiskey from Cedar Ridge before?
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. So they're a distillery in Iowa. They're actually the first craft distillery in the country that has the number 1 bourbon in their state. They outsell Jim Beam in the state of Iowa, which is very impressive. When we initially went to work with them, we figured, so Iowa grows most of the corn in the country. So we thought naturally it made sense to buy bourbon, which we did. And actually the first bourbon single cask we did was from them a year and a half ago. But one of the things that we always ask distillers when we're there, what are you excited about? What's the thing that is in your heart of hearts, your favorite whiskey? And Murphy, who's the distiller there, actually was dumb enough to show us his favorite cask, which is what you are going to taste, which is an American single malt that he makes that was finished in a sherry butt. And is not something that we thought of from them, and is really, really a special cask. And he's told the story many times, and we've told the story of how he's never going to show us his absolute favorite cask in the distillery ever again, because we will also love it and buy it. Yes. But it's a pleasure to be able to show it off to everyone in this form.
Especially in a world where I feel like there are certain expectations about where single malt comes from, whether it's like Misty Islands or the Highlands or Ireland or something like that. I feel like when people think about single malt, they do not think about the Great Plains or Iowa or anything like that. But we wanted to show that you can get really great single malt from those places.
I mean, I think like the Midwest spirits is really kicking up a lot lately. So I think that's amazing. And I mean, kudos to them for, beating Jim Beam. I mean, that's fucking awesome. So
impressive. Yeah.
I love going on a good barrel pick. I mean, I've only got to do a handful, but I do love when you're like, so what else do you got? And then they show you that other thing, and then you're like, yep, I want to buy that one. And they're like, no, we only have this one. And you're like, nope, I want this one. This is the one I want. Not question 2, but like, what is your picking process? Is it just you two and then the distiller, or do you guys have like a team?
It's basically the two of us. We work with the distiller or blender to determine the direction that we want to go, and we usually try to buy a couple of different casks at once. So like with Cedar Ridge, we bought a bourbon, which kind of showcases what they normally do, and then we also bought this, which showcases a different side of them. And we always visit, but then we get the samples sent to us back in Vermont, because when you're in the warehouse, almost everything tastes amazing, and you're like, these casks are incredible. And you get back to your lab, which has been our kitchen table because of COVID, and you're like, okay, these are all good, but these two are the ones that are really good. So we do that. We make our cask selections together, and we both have to strongly agree on everything before we buy a cask, which is is really good, except when it doesn't work and we disagree. And
like it happened today, where we both say there's clearly one cask that just knocks all of the other ones out, and
you both disagree.
But we taste everything a minimum of 3 times in an isolated, not at the distillery. We taste at the distillery to get like a direction for the samples, and then we run them through pretty intense sensory, different times of day, different days, letting our palates kind of see what it likes from day to day, because it's not always consistent. So it's important that we make sure our palate wasn't out of whack the day that we're making a selection.
That was going to be my follow-up question. What happens if there's a tie? Do we just buy both casks and then just or is there a fight that happens? Or
usually we just taste again. Okay. We'll taste until we've only ended up not buying something from 2 distilleries because we could not agree on what cask to buy. And that is what we'll do eventually. Because if we both say yes to multiple casks, we'll buy as many casks as makes sense. If one of us says no and is not moving to yes, even if the other person loves that cask, we won't buy it.
Okay. So it has to be both of you a yes, no matter what. Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually we're gonna build out a tasting panel at some point. It becomes unrealistic when we're starting to do more and more, but for now it's really setting kind of what the Lost Lantern palette is. Because when you think about independent bottlers in Scotland, some people trust Blackadder, some people trust Gordon and MacPhail. Like, you just figure out which IB you will pick stuff that you love. And so we're working now to establish what the Lost Lantern profile looks like, so that then when we build out a tasting panel, they're picking to that profile.
Gotcha. All right, cool. I think that's amazing. And again, if you guys ever need tasting interns, I'm totally down, because I mean, again, haven't tasted anything bad yet. So, like, you know, that is still fucking amazing. So, all right. Well, then, question 2. You kind of mentioned a little bit, but you guys have a motto or a tagline of it's shining a light into independent spirits. What does that mean for each of you?
Yeah. So it's shining a light on the independent spirit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our research is terrible. So we'll fire that guy. We'll make sure he never works in the business again.
It's essentially the same. I mean, for me, I love because it has the dual meaning. Okay. So it's both spirit as in whiskey. Yep. So finding things that feel really unique from a whiskey perspective, but then also when it comes to who makes it, and this is why it's so important that we are on the road, and or really more and more he's on the road because I have to do stuff back here, but that someone is going and understanding what drives the makers, the owners, the people who make the decisions. And to us, that's also shining a light on the independent spirit when it comes to a human and a philosophy on whiskey making. So we really like that tagline has both of those meanings, and can, depending on who's reading it, can evoke a certain thing that feels consistent with who we are and what we're doing from many different perspectives. What about you?
That's very much my answer too. For me, it's on the shining a light part. It's really because I think that I was growing a little frustrated when I was a whiskey advocate that there are so many of these newer distilleries, and that I found a lot of people just were not really giving them a look at all. They were like, oh, I tried one craft whiskey or whatever you want to call it in 2012 or something, and it wasn't very good. Therefore, all the whiskey from all 2,000 distilleries all over the country outside of Kentucky and Tennessee is bad. Yes. And that is a very simplistic way of looking at things. There are a lot of places that are making really unique and different styles of whiskey that are really good right now. Not whiskey that has potential, but whiskey that is like great in your glass and you want on your bar. So we really wanted to shine a light on that and help people find it, even if it was a place they previously overlooked or just never heard of.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think anybody should always be willing to taste anything at least once, right? Like, I mean, like that's the whole point. I mean, you never know what you're going to find and what you like, and yeah. Right. So
I'm sure when you came out to our table and we said, "Oh, we have a rye finished in a slow gin cask," I'm sure your first thought was not, "Oh my God, I know I'm going to love that."
Exactly.
Yeah.
You were like,
Yeah, I was like,
Okay.
yeah, that's just sound. And then, fuck, and then we were done. Like, you had me hooked.
Yeah.
It's just, you guys are drug pushers, is what you are. You're like, oh, he's hooked. Let's go. And just kept coming back.
I was like, I think we're going to see him again before the end of the night. Which we did.
Question 3, drink 3. What are we on?
All right, next we're going to do our Smooth Ambler West Virginia Straight Bourbon Whiskey Bourbon Single Cask. Our very first wheated bourbon, distilled in West Virginia. So Smooth Ambler is both a distillery and a blender in their own right. They spent a long time sourcing whiskey from other places, and were one of the leaders in that early on. And we always respected that they were very transparent about it. They bought whiskey from others, but they always said, we bought this whiskey from somebody else. Even their source line, which is called Old Scout, the name is an homage to, they went out scouting for it and found something.
Right.
But all along, they've also been making whiskey in West Virginia, and it's now been a number of years, and it's getting to the point where we think it's really special. And so this is a 5-year-old wheated bourbon, distilled and aged in West Virginia.
Cheers.
Cheers. We're still pouring.
I got distracted talking about it. I didn't actually pour it.
I should pour while you're talking. This is a bad system.
I mean, I was smelling it and it smelled so good, and I was like, I just need to get like. Sorry, I didn't mean to rush. I mean, we're not in any time. Like, yeah. Oh, that's so nice. I like that a lot. That is.
It's fun. We always joke, as an independent bottler, if you like it, then it's because we chose it. If you don't like it, it's because the distillery did something wrong.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. It's never,
So we'll take full credit for your enjoyment right now.
Oh, nope. That's going to get added right to the. All right. That's getting added to the buy list. We will
that's why we're really doing this. I'm just trying to upsell you in particular.
No,
don't care about the audience, just you.
We will put the link right there so that everybody can go ahead and.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing is we sell everything, and we work with some retail partners to get it shipped directly to people's doors, and we can ship to 40 states, which is amazing.
Yeah, and again, you guys, your shipment was within 24 hours. I had it, so like, and again. I mean, I get Vermont to New York is a 5-hour drive, but still, like, I mean, it was super quick. Like, I mean, that was awesome. Rather amazing. So, all right. So, question 3 then. Both with that Whiskey Advocate and working at Astor, what's it like now being on the other side of the table? You guys are. Review, like you're going out now selling your own wares instead of being like having people come up and approach you to taste or approach you to review. What's it like being on the other side?
I feel like this was weirder for me than it was for you, because I was hosting all these tastings and meetings and was the one being like, okay, tell me all about your story and tell me about your origin and your whiskey and about the mash bill, and let me ask the question that you don't really want to answer and figure out what that is and ask you anyway. And it's weird being on the other side of it, especially because there are not all that many people in the whiskey media world. So like, I know most of them. And then some of them, it's very friendly. And then some of them, like, even if I've known them for years, they're just like, they'll grill you. And I respect that. And at first, like, I didn't feel very articulate. I felt like I got reasonably like flustered the first couple times we did it. Because it was also all over Zoom. We launched during the pandemic. So we had to like learn how to do virtual tastings like this. And the first few times we did it, it felt very, very weird. But now I actually think it's kind of fun, especially because I know a lot of people in the media, to go to them and say like, not just here's the cool whiskey that we're making, but here's the cool whiskey that other people are making that you may not know about yet. And let me tell you their story along with our story. And I really like that as a journalist and storyteller.
Yeah. It's interesting because for me, in some ways, it's not that different than selling people whiskey, what we do, because we're going out, it's a different scale. We go out and find really cool whiskey, and then our job is to tell a story and get people just as excited about those distilleries and the whiskey as we are. And for me at Astor, it was similar. So someone comes up and asks me what whiskey to drink or to buy. And then we have the same general conversation where I'm helping them figure out what is a good fit for their palate. So it actually feels somewhat natural to me. Obviously, we're selling something. It's a different transaction, but the way that I think about why I'm doing it and what the end goal is, which is getting great whiskey into people's hands, it's actually more similar for me than it was for him. Because in some ways the tables haven't turned as much if I frame it in that very specific way.
Gotcha. I mean, I figured you guys just knew all the secrets and like, so that you're just going gangbusters because you'd be like, I know this guy and I remember now when this guy came into the store and tried to sell me this, now I totally understand. And I'm like, now I can, like.
You understand. Yeah. Some of the things where you're like, why is someone saying that? Now you get it. And it can be stressful because you really want someone to like it and you're really excited about it and you don't want to scare them off by being too excited about what you're doing, which we both get very excited about things. But I think that in some ways we were ready to have our own thing where it was, especially for you, for a long time. At a certain point you were like, everyone's doing so much cool stuff and I just get to write about it. Like I want to go do a cool thing and be able to tell people about it. So in that way, I feel like it's a good transition.
Yeah. So for me, I got into journalism because I liked telling stories and eventually kind of hit the limit of what I felt like I could accomplish in that world. And I was not enjoying it as much as I had been, but I feel like I capture the best parts of that through this, that I can tell you about these distilleries and share their stories and why we're excited about them and still capture that while doing something that feels really unique and exciting and different for American whiskey.
But it's definitely more stressful. As you can probably imagine.
I'm sure now, because again, it's something that you've made, and like going back to, if you love it, it's us. If you don't love it, well, then it's obviously the distiller's problem. Yeah. That's it. Changed in the shipment over between cask and bottling. That's not us. Right. All right. Question 4, drink 4.
Sounds good.
All right. What are we drinking?
Drink 4. Do you want to introduce
this
this one?
So this is the Spirit Works straight rye that we did. And we picked this specifically because you love the green. Yeah. Because you love the slow gin finish so much, we thought it would be fun for you to taste the underlying spirit. Because this is effectively what went into that slow gin cask.
Okay.
Yeah. A little older.
This is a little bit older. This is 5 years. And I guess it's young. Yeah, it was younger when it went into the snow gin, but it is the same underlying spirit.
All right. Adam?
No. No.
It's like
Yep. But you can probably see that our labels are different colors, and the color of the label tells you what kind of whiskey it is. So green is for straight rye. The red, like smooth amber, is for bourbons. Single malt is brown, blends are blue, and then interesting and unusual things like the slow gin finished rye go in our cream colored label, because we don't want someone to buy that and think it's going to taste exactly like a straight rye, because it does not. Because it is a rye, but it's a little different. So we use that both for weird things and in practice often for some of our favorite things that are a little off the beaten path and really cool.
Awesome. Well, this is
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, a 5-year rye from Spirit Works Distillery in Sonoma, 53-gallon cask, New American oak, of course. 70% organic rye, 10% malted rye, and 20% malted barley.
A lot of the distilleries, something like 80% of the distilleries that we've ended up working with are roughly 10 years old. It wasn't intentional. It just happened that way. Probably because they're able to go through enough cycles so they can really dial in their process. So when you're tasting whiskey from a 5-year-old distillery, the likelihood that in a couple of years the whiskey will be substantially better is really high, because if they're doing things right, they're going to be improving over time. So it isn't fair to these distilleries to look at them when they're 2 years old or 5 years old and think that is what their product's going to be like.
Absolutely.
You continue to engage and you see what their trajectory is, and some of them won't necessarily get better than it is if they like where they are, but a lot of them it'll change and evolve and become really unique and interesting and worth people's real time and investment in engaging with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree. I think that a lot of people, immediately are trying to think like a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old is going to be like that 12-year-old, or this is going to be Pappy 23, and you're like, they're all like, oh, it's crap, and you're like, no, like this has stuff that like your taste. They're trying to get you excited about what they're doing. So like if you can taste that and grow on, like, again, this is just amazing. So I mean,
Yeah.
I find that for these distilleries that were started around 10 years ago, their oldest whiskey is almost never their best whiskey. Like I recently went to a place like in the last 2 weeks and I got to try their 10-year-old whiskey and it was pretty good, but their 7-year-old whiskey was like twice as good. Because by that point they were like really had figured out what they were doing.
Exactly. Yeah. They got their stride and they're really kind of nailed down their process. I mean, I think Robin talks a lot about that, of like really kind of getting down into that, like the process, and really kind of the what happened kind of moment, like shit changed and like you really became the distillery, you came into your own, if you will. So like I think that's
and it's worth pointing out that if you're looking for a Kentucky bourbon or a Kentucky rye, generally the stuff that we're buying is not going to fit that bill, because we're looking for places that are doing things that speak to where they are, speak to who they are. They're not trying to replicate. We love Kentucky rye. We love Kentucky bourbon. We love Indiana MGP stuff. But the types of distilleries that we're looking for are building their whiskey around who they are and where they are. So looking like with this Spirit Works rye, it is very grain forward, and often people are scared when you hear that because there are bad associations with it. But to us, it brings out like rye bread. It brings out all of those kind of baked goods that we all love. Yeah. And it feels very California. It feels like you can almost smell the grapevines in this. Like it's a cooler climate than Kentucky. And that to us is when we taste a whiskey that evokes that place or really is in tune with the people, that's when we're like, yes. Well, on these visits, we're like, okay, that's a starting off point. And then if the whiskey's great, then we've hit 2 of those boxes that we want to check. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I mean, tasting this, like I immediately, you nailed it with rye bread. I was like, I want butter, I want a little tartar, and I like a little salt and pepper, and like I'm like, oh, this is just amazing. Like this little toast, like a little avocado toast, and we're like very California. We're ready to rock. Like this is just absolutely amazing. So,
well, that would be a weird cocktail. You just put rye whiskey with some like blended avocado and some butter, and
I mean, why not? Like, why not? Like, I mean, avocado's got good fats. I mean, why not fat wash a good rye with some avocado and see what the fuck? Okay, that challenge accepted. So
that's what I'm hearing.
Please give it a try and let us know how it goes.
All right. So, question 4. Drink 4 was amazing. You guys classify yourselves as whiskey hunters. What's the white whale of whiskey that you would love to go and pick from?
That's all you.
Well, this is such a cheat, but the white whale is the next one that we're gonna have, because it took me years to convince them to work to sell this to us, and I was very, very excited that we were able to get it. But other things beyond that, I would really like to do a few single casks from a distillery called 888, which is on Nantucket, which is a part of our American Vatted Malt. So we worked with them before, but not for single casks. And I find very few people know about them. I don't know if you've heard of them before.
Haven't actually.
They have their youngest single malt. Their youngest American single malt is 12 years old. They have a 15. They've done a 16. I think you might have some stuff that's up to 18 now. All distilled and aged on Nantucket, which is a climate very similar to Scotland. Basically only sold on the island of Nantucket, which you have to take a ferry to get to, and is a pretty expensive community to spend time at. A bottle of their whiskey is normally about $400 to $500 for their 12-year-old. So it's pricey, but it's also absolutely spectacular and is exactly what I want to help introduce people to, because I find even a lot of whiskey people have not heard of it. So our whiskey would normally be more expensive than someone's core release. I'm hoping we can eventually work with them on a single cask that's like not 12 years old, but also like a little more accessible to help people discover them.
It's accessible to whiskey nerds, not only wealthy people.
Yeah, because it's great stuff. So next time you're in Nantucket, go check it out.
All right. So what you're saying is you're going to be like, so what else you guys got?
As always, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That one too.
No, not really. This is so your purview.
Irish whiskey, maybe.
I mean, I think one of the things that we talk about is at what point we expand beyond American whiskey, where it's still like we're so focused on American whiskey because we feel like this is where we can add value. And for us, the conversation is always, can we add to the conversation? There's a reason why we don't work with MGP, because so many people are doing great stuff with MGP that we feel that we can't add to the conversation. So when we think about moving outside of the US, thinking about Ireland, thinking about Scotland, thinking about the rest of the world, there are already so many great independent bottlers working with distilleries in these places. It's what can we add to the conversation? What can we do that other people may not be focusing on? So that's kind of it. I'm looking forward to the time when we figured that out and are starting to work with places and can find those newer distilleries that large Scottish independent bottlers may not be focusing on because it just doesn't make sense from a volume perspective. But we're always looking for that fun thing, or moving outside of whiskey, doing some apple brandy or rum. Like we have, but this is all down the line kind of thing. But it is something that when we go out and get a beer, it's the stuff that we dream about.
Okay. Oh, I got another one. The other one, the white whale that I don't know if I'll ever catch, but I really, really want to do it. I would love to do basically a cask strength mellow corn. Some like 8 to 10-year-old corn whiskey from Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
That can say on the label that that's exactly where it came from. And I hope it'll happen someday. I've talked to them a little bit. Whether it'll eventually happen, I don't know, but I sure hope it does. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm a big mellow corn fan, and I owe it to Mike from Travel Bar, which when you guys come back to New York, I will take you there. Because again, now that we're family, we have to drink together a lot. But he has a cocktail that is basically one bottle of mellow corn and then one bottle of spicy pear bitters. And then he just pours it all together, shakes it up over ice. And then, I mean, there's probably some love added into it. And he probably does something else. But I will tell you, like, it's damn fucking good. So, like, that is, it made me buy a bunch of spicy pear bitters. So I was like, all right, cool.
Nice.
But back to the Irish point. So then, are there certain Irish brands that you would want to work with? Or, I mean, again, as an Irish guy, you totally piqued my attention as we're in another one. So like that's
I think we would follow all of our rules, which means that we would have to go to Ireland and visit.
I know, like that's.
It sounds terrible, right?
I know, like shit, poor you.
I mean, Waterford, the stuff they've been putting out so far, I think is really interesting. I mean, we both really like stuff that Middleton puts out, but that's an area where I'm like, I don't know whether we can add value or not because they do such a great job themselves. Yeah. So I think it involves, driving around the Irish countryside and going to these smaller distilleries and checking them out. And that'll be really, really rough and something we certainly won't enjoy driving around.
It'll be terrible. It'll be terrible.
Final drink. All right.
You're gonna pull on your ear. Yeah, this is.
All right.
I'll let you intro it.
So, all right. So number 5 is our hand selected single cask from McCarthy's in Hood River, Oregon. Brown label again, because it's a single malt. This is a 6-year-old peated American single malt made with peat sourced from Iowa and then aged in Oregon oak, third fill, which is effectively the same as Garyana oak, which is more familiar from other brands. But I won't say anything else about it yet. I'll let you try it first.
Before we bought whiskey from this distillery, they would have been your white whale.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
They were one of the places I wanted to work with from the day that we started Lost Lantern.
All right. I mean, now I'm also just very curious on what the next release is. So like, we just have to keep an eye open for that one. So. So this one would be the most scotchy of the Scotch ones, right? Like that's
with the peat.
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah. You
But
think, you think the Cedar Ridge?
I think it's Cedar
is the
Ridge.
sherry,
Well,
but-
mostly because the Garyana oak adds these baking spice notes that I never get from Scotch.
okay.
From the oak from Scotland. Even the bourbon fills in Scotland don't get this kind of like, I'm trying to think of, it's like clove that you get from the Gary oak, and you get that from some of the Westland releases as well that are in Gary oak that you just don't see in Scotland. So for me, this would be the one that I would probably think is like from Taiwan or some weird place that has like more than Scott. Like I think in some ways the Cedar Ridge I would probably blind as a weird Scotch, whereas this I'd probably blind as like milk and honey or some like an Israeli single malt or Taiwan single malt, like because of the spices that I wouldn't be able to place because Gary oak is so unique.
And for me, this cask is special because Clear Creek, which is where they make McCarthy's, is actually not a particularly young distillery. They've been around since the mid 90s. So for American whiskey outside of Kentucky, that's a very long time.
Yeah.
But in the more than 25 years they've been making whiskey until the release of this in the fall, they had never released anything more than 3 years old before. And this was 6-year-old. They at the same time that we released this, they did a 6-year-old at 100 proof in Oregon. And this is our 6-year-old at cask strength for everywhere else. So it was really exciting for us to be able to show this distillery that we already really liked what it looks like at a slightly older age statement.
Yeah. And this is our first peated single malt as well. So for all of the people that love Lefroy or Ardbeg or things that are big peat, as someone who loves big peat, we wanted to put something out that has an American twist, but very much speaks to those profiles.
Okay. I'm very sorry, Adam. I can't tug my ear for you on this one, but it's good, but yeah, it's just
it's not as much your cup of tea. But that's the beauty of that's the beauty of the single cask for us is some people will love some things and then other people love other things. It's really fun to see how different palates respond to different things. I
mean, I get like the brininess of it. Like this feels very briny for me. Like it's like definitely has that peat of like the Lefroy. I get the Band-Aid taste. So that is again Irish. Sorry.
Yeah.
But that really is the fun. Like there were some Instagram people reviewed this, and one of them said that it like literally left them speechless and was one of their favorite things they had tried all year, and they were just like obsessed with it. And more like you were with the slow gin finish. And we love seeing how people respond to things, especially when they don't expect it. Like when you try some really coveted bourbon that everybody already likes, and then you like it, what a shock. When you try something no one's ever heard of and it's totally unique and different, that's what's really exciting.
The light bulb moment. We love that. But it makes sense if you're an Irish whiskey guy that it's less your cup of tea. This is Europe. It's also I am not a peat, like huge peat face melter person. So this is more in your style than in my style. You can, while we both have to say yes to everything, there are certain whiskeys that feel more of his influence and certain whiskeys that feel more of my influence.
All right. Now we have to drink all of them and find out which team is which team. So
I feel like eventually people will tell, but
shirts will be made.
Yeah. We've joked that eventually we'll have we'll both have like 2 whiskeys a year where we can overrule the other person, but we have to be more established and we have to have the history of credibility before we can go off book like that. But it will be fun when people can say, oh, well, let me see what Adam actually likes, or let me see if I agree with Nora. We do periodically write our own tasting notes in our newsletter. We go over and we say, this is Nora's take, this is Adam's take, as a way for people to start getting to know us as well and why we each like it, which can be different reasons.
So was your favorite the Spirit Works or the Smooth Ambler?
I would have to say the Spirit Works. Just because again, haven't tasted, and I mean, Smooth Ambler was Smooth Ambler, and like it was just really good, and it lived up to expectations. Whereas the Spirit Works, that was just fucking amazing. Like that was brand new, and like that was. I mean,
yeah. It sounds like that's a distillery that you need to go visit.
no, actually, you are absolutely right. Like
that's the fun for us, is we get to introduce people who are really excited about whiskey in general to a place you may not have found. And you can visit Spearworks and Sonoma Distilling in the same day. They're only probably like 45 minutes apart.
Yeah.
Well, no, and also, I mean, thank you. I mean, now like you've turned me into 2 really great fucking ryes that great. Now I have to, you'll see as soon as we hang up. I'm shit you not. I'm going to be ordering. So
sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry. Okay. All right. So question 5 comes down to the Whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want, but the coin gives us the answer.
Okay.
You do not have to answer. And then on this question, you should not answer. So, question 5. Do you have a better palate than the other one?
There is an answer to this question. We're each going to do it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Mine says fuck yeah.
It says fuck no.
So
there we go. Coin doesn't lie. So
as the person who was the professional whiskey reviewer for many years, I can still say that Nora has a better palate than I do. A little bit better.
It's only slightly better. It's more I am able to taste flaws in whiskey in a way that he can't.
That's not true in general, but for some stuff, for like specific notes with sherry.
You are better at writing tasting notes than I am, but I am, when it comes, like very slightly better at actually analyzing the whiskey.
It was just a fun little question. I don't want to cause a fight.
No, this is well established. It's well established.
It's like, no, I have a way better palate. It's well established. She's like,
not way better, but slightly better.
All right. That's 5 questions answered, 5 drinks down.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not midnight. So
it's not even close to midnight.
No.
So I mean,
it was fun. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, so that's 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered. Thank you so much for joining us. I really hope that we can
for having us.
But all right, until next time. So cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.